UFC 314 was a banger and we demolished the card. We made a hell of a lot of money and I, as a fan, really enjoyed the card. I want to go through the card with you today as there's no UFC this week and kind of recap how the card went, speak about Volkanovski, speak about Diego Lopes, speak about the fights, and also give you some takeaways, things that we can learn from the card, betting lessons we can learn from that card, taking it into the next UFC card to ultimately make us more money. So let's get into it, boys. First, I want to recap my show. So every single week, I do the show called the Lucrative MMA Betting Show, where I break down the main card of every UFC event and give you my picks, predictions, and analysis. So on that show, I gave you Volkanovski, Paddy, Pimblett, and Gene Silva. Those were 3 solid winners. I also picked Krylov and Pitbull, and they didn't get there. Now, obviously, that was just the main card, right? It wasn't my official bets. They were just the fighters that I gave out to win. The official bets crushed it, and my VIP had the biggest event of the entire year at over 22 units of profit. The VIP also swept the PFL card the day before, where we won 18 units of profit. And there's a PFL card coming up in a couple of days, so maybe I'll do some content for that one. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you want some content. But let's speak about the fights first, and together we will go through them and try and learn some lessons that we can apply to our MMA betting in the future to help us earn more money. So first of all, man, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. We have to speak about that fight. The main event of the evening, an absolute banger. I gave out Volkanovski on this very YouTube channel a couple of days before, and I ended up putting 4 units on him myself. Now, I bet on him over a multitude of sports betting accounts. I bet on him in person with paper tickets and online. I was pretty confident that Volkanovski would get it done. It really just came down to whether his chin would hold up, right? Because outside of that, Lopes did not have the skill. I believe that Lopes did not have the skill to beat Volkanovski. He was drawing dead on a knockout, a knockdown, or a random submission. That fight was a war, man. I mean, Volkanovski hurt Diego Lopes, stumbled him a couple of times. Lopes hurt Volkanovski, stumbled him a couple of times. But overall, you saw the skill set of Volkanovski be far too wide, technical, and on a much higher fight IQ level than Diego Lopes. So it's all well and good reminiscing on the fight, right? But what is the takeaway here for me and for you as MMA gamblers that we can take into our next betting opportunity? So the takeaway here for me is honestly a narrative that I like to call washed or not. Now what that means is the fighter washed or not? Because if they are, they're probably gonna lose. And if they're not, they're probably gonna win. And that was the case here, right? If Alexander Volkanovski came into this fight and he was washed, his chin was gone, his chin was done, which was the narrative going into this fight, then he would have lost because he got caught by some big shots by Diego Lopes, most notably in the 4th round where he hurt and he said that his eyesight went, right? He got hit and his eyesight went. There was also a moment earlier in the fight, I believe it was in the 2nd round, where at the end of the round, he got caught. So he took some shots in this fight, but he was able to take them. His chin wasn't completely done. If his chin was done, he wouldn't have won that fight and we would be looking at Diego Lopes as the new featherweight champion. And honestly, what I would say to you regarding the washed or not narrative and how to determine whether the fighter is washed or not is who have they been fighting in their recent performances, and is it multiple bad recent performances or is it only 1 or 2? Now, in the case of Alexander Volkanovski, right? People was thinking he was washed because he fought Ilia Topuria, where he got knocked out, and he fought Islam Makhachev. Now, there was a lot of context that should go into that. The Islam Makhachev fight, he literally came in looking very bad on the scales. He only had about a week or 2 to prepare for that. It was a short notice fight, and he got head kicked within the first couple of minutes, and he lost the fight. Now, we can't really take anything away from that one, right? So then you look at the Ilia Topuria fight. Well, the Ilia Topuria may go down as one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. And Volkanovski won the 1st round against him. So yes, he did get knocked out, but Topuria is one of the greatest fighters of all time. He probably would have always knocked him out, even if Volkanovski was in his prime. And Volkanovski showed to me in that fight that he looked good in the 1st round, and he just got caught by somebody who's gonna catch 99.9% of the fighters throughout that division's history. So those 2 fights did not confirm that he was washed, right? And although he may still have been, I didn't have no evidence of it. So based on that, I bet on Volkanovski. You can use this moving forward in your own MMA betting career. Do not assume a fighter is washed if they have been fighting the top top level of competition. If they're taking a step down, they may show a vintage performance like Alexander Volkanovski did. Now let's speak about Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. And I'm gonna speak about the washed or not narrative as well in this one. So on the show last week, I gave out Paddy Pimblett. I hope you guys listened to me. I hope you guys cashed, just as I hope you listened to me on the Volkanovski one and cashed on Volkanovski as well. Now the only bet I made on Paddy Pimblett was I ended up putting him in a parlay for my VIP members on the Elite Zone. So the Elite Zone of my website is where you get all of my long shot parlays, long shot prop bets, as well as the full card breakdowns and all of the bets, right? And we actually cashed a 5-leg, I believe it was, long shot parlay for odds of around plus 500. And I just put small money on that one. I think it was $200 on it and it returned about $1,000. Now the reason that I bet on Paddy Pimblett and that I thought Michael Chandler was washed versus thinking that Volkanovski wasn't washed is very clear. Their recent performances. Like I said, Volk's recent performances, in my opinion, weren't that bad and they had a lot of context to them. Whereas Chandler's recent performances, he did not look good. I think he had one of the worst performances of his career against Charles Oliveira. He looked bad in a 25-minute fight, gassed out after a round or two. It was very, very surprising to me Charles couldn't finish him in that spot. And I think that speaks to Charles being a little bit over the hill as well, and we will see in his future fights. He also just had a very bad run in the UFC. Yes, he was competing in his losses, but he was getting cleanly beat. You know, he had been finished in his losses multiple times in the UFC, and he only had 2 wins in the UFC against Dan Hooker, which was about 5 years ago, and then Tony Ferguson. So I just felt this guy was washed. He was getting hurt by everybody, and it showed itself in the fight. So a takeaway for you again is the same thing as Volk. The washed or not narrative can really be determined by their recent performances when you judge the context of their performances and how they looked in the performance, not necessarily the result of the performance. Volk got beat by Topuria, got knocked out, got slept, but he didn't look that bad in my opinion. Michael Chandler didn't get slept, didn't get finished by Charles Oliveira, which is great, right? You don't get finished by him in a 25-minute fight, but he looked bad. It was a worse performance than Volk's fight against Topuria, even though Volk got finished and Chandler didn't, in my opinion. And I believe that showed itself on Saturday. It's Sunday for me here in New Zealand. That's when the UFC fights are on. There's a couple of other fights I want to run through because they were really, really good fights, really interesting fights. And again, I want to give you a takeaway that you can use, lessons you can use in the future. So Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. This was a great fight, right? It was a very controversial fight because it was a controversial end to the fight. It was a controversial stoppage. You know, it was a very close fight going into round 3. Ige cracks him on the chin or the side of the head, and Sean Woodson doesn't recover in time. He ends up going for a single leg because he's hurt. He didn't like the pressure after being wobbled, and then the referee jumps in after some rabbit punches to the head, and a lot of people went crazy on that. Now I bet on Dan Ige, me and the VIP guys bet on Dan Ige, and we bet on Dan Ige via KO. So that was a very, very big cash for us. One of the biggest cashes on the card. Now I'm gonna hold my hands up. I got very lucky on the Ige KO bet, right? Now, the Ige KO bet may have cashed anyway because Woodson was rocked, he was hurt, he shot him for the takedown, and he was very slow coming up from the takedown because he was hurt, right? He wasn't in a good position. Maybe Ige would have landed the KO blow, but we don't know if he would have, right? So I definitely do believe it was a bit of an early stoppage, and I was lucky. I hold my hands up, thank you. I'd take that luck all day. Now on the money line side, betting on Ige, I think it was a fantastic bet. I believe that Ige looked like the favorite in that spot, and that the true odds for that is probably close to around 60% Dan Ige. So he should be minus 150, but we actually bet him at plus 150. Now it was controversial, right? So regardless of who you think was winning or not, let's speak about a takeaway that you can use, because I always like to impart knowledge rather than just speak about the fights, right? I'm not here for only entertainment. I am here to impart wisdom and knowledge to help you make money. So let me tell you something, boys. The reason I bet against Sean Woodson is because he never separates in his fights. He fights on slim margins, right? Separation and slim margins are just 2 terms that we use as MMA bettors to basically say that the guy is always in close fights. Sean Woodson is always in close fights. Fights that he wins, fights that he loses, most of the time they're very close and they could go either way. Let's think of the Julian Erosa fight. He lost that fight, but he was doing well in the first 2 rounds. The Charles Jourdain fight, he won that fight, but it was a very close fight. The Alex Caceres fight, he won that fight, but most of the media scorecards scored it for Alex Caceres. Dan Ige fight, some people had him up going into round 3, but guess what? All 3 judges had him down 2-0 going into round 3. You cannot bet Sean Woodson at -170. This guy never separates. He has no margins. We don't know who's ever winning his fights. The judges score it one way, you score it another way, I score it another way. These are not the type of fighters you want to bet as favorites in the UFC. And that proved itself to be completely true against Dan Ige this weekend, as all 3 judges had Ige winning the fight 2-0 going into round 3, and then he gets a stoppage in round 3. That's another thing. This guy doesn't have much finishing potential. It's just another reason why he doesn't separate, because he can't finish you. One thing I'll mention, and the last thing, boys, right, is that this was a big step up for Sean Woodson. He had never fought anyone on the level of Dan Ige. And this was a big step down for Dan Ige, right? He had been fighting the top contenders, Lerone Murphy, Diego Lopes, and now he fights Sean Woodson and he's an underdog? Absolute ridiculous line, boys. Take this away. Look to fade fighters who do not separate, especially when they're a favorite. Look to fade fighters taking a big step up in competition, especially when they're a favorite. Use this knowledge and it will help you in the future. So I spoke about the level of competition in the Ige and Woodson fight, which is so important, boys. I was banging home about this on all the podcasts I was on last week and on my channel. Level of competition is so important, right? All you need to do is look at the fighter's record. Who have they fought? Who have they won? And who have they lost to? If they've never beaten anyone on the level of their opponent, then it's going to be tough for them to do it. Can they do it? Yes, Paddy did it against Chandler. That's Paddy's best win, right? But like I said, the washed or not narrative comes into play. Like, there's obviously lots of things surrounding it, but level of competition is massive in MMA. Sedriques Dumas versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. Let's speak about this one. I couldn't believe the line here. I bet money line on Michal Oleksiejczuk and I bet the KO line. Michal Oleksiejczuk, right, was going toe-to-toe with Khalil Roundtree. He beat him at 205 pounds. And now you want to say that his KO line should be plus money against Sedriques Dumas, who has fought nowhere near the level of competition or beat anywhere near the level of competition as Michal Oleksiejczuk. The reason the line was where it is because people were looking at Michal Oleksiejczuk's recent run. Right, they saw that he lost 3 fights in a row, but he lost 3 fights to very, very good fighters. The level of competition was way higher than Sedriques Dumas. He was taking a massive step down in competition. And that is why we smashed the line, the KO line, the money line, everything, we bet it, and we cashed easy, one of the easiest bets on the entire card. So again, it's very similar to the Ige and Woodson one. The level of competition is a very, very important thing to understand in MMA. Not only the level of competition, but the level of wins and level of losses. So again, take that one away and you'll do a lot better betting in the future. The last one I want to speak about, and I'll just touch on this one quickly because the takeaway, it's not too prevalent and too obvious, right? Because it really comes into the washed or not narrative, but it's Julian Erosa to win via KO in round 1. Right, I played that at plus 500, sent it out to all my VIP members. They all played it plus 500. I also bet the under 2.5 rounds at Pick'em. So I guess the takeaway for me, and I knew this pre-fight, right, is that Elkins was completely washed. We had seen time and time again that Elkins was washed, and even in fights that he was winning, he was getting beat up, he was getting hurt, he was getting wobbled, he was getting dropped. He looked like he moved in slow motion, like he's swimming underwater on the feet when he's striking. Still a good wrestler, still a good scrambler, but his striking is completely gone. His chin was deteriorating. I mean, this was obvious to me on tape. Now, I think the thing that I want to push home to you is, I know a lot of people bet the submission on this fight, Julian Erosa submission, because he's got a very good guillotine, right? But if you watch the tape, Darren Elkins had one of the best guillotine defenses in history. So he had one of the best guillotines in the division going up against one of the best guillotine defenses in MMA history, right? So what that meant to me is like, it's basically a wash. Why don't we look to a KO, right? Because even if Erosa gets him in a guillotine, he's going up against the guy who has the best guillotine submission defense in MMA history. So then we think, can Erosa KO him? You look back at Erosa's fights, Erosa's dangerous, man. He's KO'd some people that he probably shouldn't have KO'd in the past. And oftentimes, he's done it in round 1, right? He starts hard, starts early. And if you look at Darren Elkins' fights, a lot of times when he's getting cracked, when he's getting dropped and wobbled, it is early, it is in round 1, because he takes some time to warm up into the fight. He's not a good striker, he's slow, he needs to get you tired. So all that mixed into the pot made it an obvious play on Erosa via KO to me. And then obviously I put the KO in round 1 because it was a massive number, and I thought, man, if Elkins is gonna get KO'd, it's gonna be early. Like, it's not gonna be a round 3 KO. Like, if it's in round 3, historically, this guy's gonna last to a decision, but he can be wiped out early. It's happened before multiple times and even in recent years. So I thought, you know, KO1 was the perfect spot and it showed itself to be true. So I guess the takeaway for that one is just look at a fighter's historic durability and make sure you look at the stylistics. Yes, Erosa has one of the best guillotines in history, but who is he going up against? He's going up against someone with the best guillotine defense in history and also one of the worst striking defenses. So yeah, that's the takeaway I would say. So that was a great UFC event, right? UFC 314 was a banger. But while everyone was focused on the UFC event, we was also focused on the PFL event. Like I said, I won 20 units, 18 point something, I believe, on the PFL event, which was directly before the UFC. One of the biggest weekends I've ever had in my career. It was a 45 unit weekend for me and my VIP members overall. And this week we have PFL again. We've won double-digit unit profit in the last two events. 18 units last week and 10 units the week before. So although there's no UFC this week, we don't stop. I'm gonna be smashing PFL bets left, right, and center. Very much looking forward to this card. I already have a couple of PFL bets locked in, and that's it. We don't stop. We're gonna keep cashing. If you want some PFL content, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll go live, I'll do a stream, I'll give you out some analysis, something like that. If I have time, I'm not sure about this week, but let me know in the comments. If there's good engagement, I will try and do it. But if you wanna sign up and get all of my official bets and predictions and full card breakdowns for the PFL card and cash with me for a third week in a row, then you can go to the link in my bio, lucrativemmabetting.com, sign up for an elite monthly package. You'll get a bunch of content there that's gonna help you make money. We have won 7 of the last 8 weekends. So yes, we had a great weekend last week, but we've had a great weekend over the last 2 months. 7 of the last 8 weekends, and this week will be 8 of the last 9 weeks profitable. So let's keep cashing it, boys. If you sign up to the website, I'll see you on the inside. And outside of that, I'll see you in my next video. Peace and good luck on your bets as always.